Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I have got my friend Casey Jackson, who is the master of motivational interviewing, all sorts of things. Casey, before we get to the video, I just want to say one thing is I've had a number of people when they saw that you and I were going to be talking today, people were going, "Oh man, you're talking to Casey. That is so cool." So this is going to be an amazing conversation. You are obviously famous and what you're doing is amazing. Before we get started with our conversation, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. As a way of getting into what you do, I want to start with this question. Your central theme is that you want to reach people who don't want to be reached, or at least think they don't want to be reached, or maybe they want to be reached and they are afraid of the consequences. Talk to me about all of that, because it sounds pretty intimidating.
You know, the reality, Steve, Dr. William Miller talks about this, wrote a whole book on ambivalence. Human beings just fundamentally are faced with a multitude of decisions every single day that they struggle with. I mean, things from, what are we going to have for dinner to, am I going to stay in this marriage or am I going to stay in this job? And when we see people struggle, we just tend to want to jump in and give advice and suggestions, and it doesn't help the brain process. So what effective communication does is, how do you help the brain really efficiently and really effectively work through simple dilemmas? But most of the populations I get to work with are very complex dilemmas. Do I stay in my home? Do I stay in this relationship? Do I stay in this job? So there's ambivalence, and then multi-competing factors that just throw data in your face and make it difficult to make decisions on any given day. And this process helps the brain. What I've really honed in on is, how do you use language to help the brain maximize its capacity and decision-making capacity?
I have this big list of questions I wrote. I'm just going to throw them all out because I've got so many good questions here related to this. So one of the things that you talk about this complexity, and I think it's worthwhile to really dig into it. So I love AI. And I can go in, I'm thinking about a topic and I'm rolling it around in my head. And if it gets to a high enough level, in the past, I would have gone to Google and I would have Googled it and gone to site after site after site. Don't have to do that anymore. I go to Claude or ChatGPT and say, I'm thinking about this. Tell me all there is. And my problem is I might think about 30 things in a day and put them all into Claude, and pretty soon my brain is just clogged with all this stuff. And I don't know that it's exactly related to the motivational interviewing, but I think that you brought up this question of, how do we make sense of all this ability to know so much more, or at least have so much more dumped on us?
Yeah, I'm going to parse this out into two different paths of the answers, and you can pick whichever direction you want to go. The first one, and this was my paranoia, from being obsessed with the Matrix, my kids watching Meet the Robinsons, just my paranoia around AI. And I was very much the anti-AI bandwagon. It's irrelevant to be anti-AI because it's here and it's not leaving. So it's embedded, and it will be forever embedded in our culture. The two things that I'll tell you about that decision-making process is that what I truly believe is going to be a commodity that has value in the future is human-to-human communication. I think it's going to be on trend 20 years from now to have a real therapist. I think that's going to be on trend, because I know that that's going away because people are so obsessed with AI. What my fear is, because this is my area of expertise, is human beings are losing the capacity to human communication. That's my area of expertise. The other thing that I'll say about this with the Claude, AI, all of those aspects of it, is what happens is it does have an impact to some extent on our prefrontal cortex, on our thinking part of our brain. So what happens is we become more insulated and insular in our thinking, And because the way AI is set up, it feeds us so much of what we want to hear. Even when we ask for data, it's still programmed for some modicum of confirmation bias. So those are the things that cause me some angst. And I use AI, but I'm so conscious about what I'm using it for as a tool and not leaning it into my problem solving partner, because it is going to extinguish the need for human to human communication. And I'll tell you the thing that scares me the most, Steve, and then let you respond to this, is the reason why AI is so effective is because, in my estimation, it is better at expressing accurate empathy than humans are. Expressing accurate empathy, which means articulating what you're struggling and what you're feeling with without bias.
Wow. So I want to hold on to that. I want to, so we're going to come back to that because I think that's worth digging into. So I use AI probably, as I talk to people about AI, I probably use it more than just about anybody else. And I use it as a thought partner to think about things, to talk about things. And for me, it works best when I have conversations with it like I was talking to a human. And that's why this empathy thing, it really, I think, is worth some conversation. But I also recognize, and so I have to keep reminding myself, this isn't a human, this is just a machine. And that, as you say, it's biased to tell me I'm the most brilliant person in the world. And so I frequently, well, I'll give you an example right now. I'm telling children's story at church. So on Instagram reel that had a significant idea, I took a transcript of that. I popped it into AI. It gave me some ideas. And then I came back when I was all done. And I said, okay, pretend you're the best children's storyteller in the whole world. And you think this is a terrible idea. What's wrong with it? And so I spend a lot of time asking it to be very critical of me because I find that it gives me better information. But I worry, and then I know I'm talking more than I should, but then there was a story in, I think, the Wall Street Journal earlier this week. I'm 90% sure about this guy who had this conversation with Gemini. He had this relationship when his wife left him, and he committed suicide. And the Gemini is being sued. They're claiming that the family is claiming that Google, that Meta didn't do enough to. I guess it was. I'm not sure. Remember which. So not doing enough to really protect him. And so, what do we do with all of that? What do you do? I'm going to do this differently. What do you do with all of that?
You know, because I've been so obsessed with brain science, you know, when you and I met, my obsession with motivational interviewing, because it's effective communication to help people with addiction issues, to help with weight loss, to help with life, just to help human beings function better without telling them what to do. Then I started spreading more into looking at stress on the brain and trauma, because I work in mental health and work with families and children. And so I incarcerated people. So I really wanted to understand brain science and trauma better. And in my own search for that, in my own writings around that, what you're looking at is what we're starting to lose the capacity for is metacognition. And metacognition is the greatest thing our brain can do. And we're surrendering that to AI. Metacognition means that we start to examine our own thoughts the way that you're examining them with your AI. It's not bad to do what you're doing. It helps your thought process to an extent, but it doesn't help you have better self-awareness, because you're going to be shaped by AI's metacognition, because it befriends you so profoundly. You start to defer to its insights often over your own, going, wow, that's smart. I should have thought it that way. And then it'll give you credit. No, I didn't think of it. You thought of it. So it does this loop that'll keep you in that thought process, but it actually prevents some level of metacognition because it supplants metacognition. And what I'm going to tell you, Steve, is metacognition is not normal in mainstream American culture, because we're so used to deferring to news, to social media, to everything else to think for us. So right now, what I'm holding on to is my capacity for metacognition, to be able to think above my own brain, to be able to analyze my own thoughts and go, is this a smart or not? Does this line with your values or not? Instead of digging into a righteous perspective or a know-it-all perspective. because that is what helps our brain progress and what our brain has the capacity to progress. But we're short-circuiting all of these things our brain has the capacity to do. Not just, I mean, for me, it was with social media first, and now with AI, it's like my paranoia about the matrix and just being batteries that are plugged in, staring at our screens, and not even living life is just, I think that fantasy and that reality are the bridges are starting to touch on both sides.
So yeah, and as I'm thinking about it, I mean, as I was reading about the lawsuit about this guy who committed suicide, my initial reaction was, he's got to take some responsibility himself, and I still believe that that's true. However, what as you were talking, the thing that was going through my brain was, man, my AI conversations are a ton easier than my conversations that I have with my kids, my spouse, the people I go to church with, my team. Because when I talk to them, at some level, there's always this tiny little thing of, when I talk to them, I've got to make sure I don't insult them. I've got to make sure I'm actually communicating the thing I'm communicating, and they're going to get it. And my brain has to work a lot harder, and that's really scary to me.
Absolutely. And why? And what do we tend to want in our culture? We just want a quicker path or an easier fix. I mean, we're literally trained and cultivated to have things easier in our lives. And on one hand, it's like, well, why wouldn't we want that? But on the flip side, it's like, are we evolving or are we devolving? And these are my meta questions that I ask myself with the things that I pursue in terms of, and most people, I think that have some insight are just like, I need to think about this stuff. Where does this fit in all of it? What you're talking about, Steve, is so critical. I mean, that is the MI side of my world, is because what we know is when other people share their opinions, there's a probability the brain is going to have to go, do I agree or disagree? Which puts it in a defensive stance in that moment. So these are the things that, like, when I teach methods of communication, it's like literally every time I open my mouth, I can assess Steve's brain and what pinged off of his brain by what comes out of his mouth and what his mouth tells me. You can assess where the brain is at. We just tend to be hyper obsessed with content. We're very narrative driven. Cultures are very narrative driven. But as you start to look at brain science, you're going, oh my gosh, I can tell where the trauma in the brain is. I can tell where the defense is. I can tell where this treasure trove of brilliance is, literally by what comes out of their mouth next. Can I correct, or can I strategically say something next that's going to help unlock things in their brain and help their brain grow and be all that it's meant to be? That's my niche in the world of communication, is just being obsessed with how do I help people get back to the brilliance in their brain and not defer to so many other things.
Yeah. So you got me going so bad here, right? So the problem I see with AI then is that it has a lot more potential to accelerate probably a better word, but the dysfunctions that we all have in our minds, and to feed those and make them seem more normal, when in fact we should be getting feedback when it's like, that's not okay. And so I wonder if all the hostility and social media, of course, already was doing that, right? So
yes.
I have had, I don't know, a number of people who have effectively shunned me on social media because they didn't like my particular, not even my question, even just asking questions about their political side on both sides, right? And it's like, if you don't agree with me, go away.
Yeah. And this is, again, where, you and I are old enough to go, this was not an issue 40 years ago. Like, political discourse was what you did with your neighbors when you disagreed with them and you still had a cup of coffee or, a beer at the barbecue, and you talked politics for hours, completely disagreeing with each other, but, shaking each other's hand and giving a hug and then borrowing the lawnmower the next day. Like, that has dissipated, but part of that is dissipated because people will not go to a deeper level of critical thought. They will only operate based off the sound bites that they want, and the sound bites that they want are forcing confirmation bias. And in psychology, there's a whole study on this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, that in this argument, someone is wrong and neither one of them knows it. Like that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's
Right.
like, but you both can't be right. And neither one will admit that they're wrong because their brain doesn't genuinely believe that they're wrong because of confirmation bias. So it's just, you can see how people are locking into these things because they're not using advanced thinking that their brain has the capacity to do. Because if they go to advanced thinking, they have to go, okay, maybe I'm not 100% right on that. And people in this day and age, people just struggle with accountability on that level.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. I mean, I find myself, and if any people follow me, I mean, it's not that hard to see this, but I sometimes get drawn. I let myself, not anybody's fault but mine. I get involved in political discussions on Facebook, and my big position on it is that you should use the same standard to judge two positions. You should use the same standard to judge both those on the left and on the right. And my second position is that until the people on the left are willing to hold their own side accountable and the people on the right are willing to hold their own side accountable, it's only going to get worse. And I'm just shocked at how hostile people are to that idea, because to me it seems pretty logical. What am I getting wrong here?
Because, well, so this is the what's happening in the brain is, it's like, if you know you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes, okay?
Yeah.
And I say, Steve, you know you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes. Part of your brain automatically goes on the defense, even if you agree with what I'm saying. You have to your brain wants to make a counterpoint, because this is what I love about the structure of motivational interviewing is your internal debate. As soon as somebody opens their mouth, it pivots from this teeter-totter here to this teeter-totter here between you and I. So as soon as you can have this internal debate, but as soon as somebody opens their mouth on either side of the teeter-totter, your natural instinct is to start to talk about this side of the teeter-totter. If I say, if it's a smoking thing and I say, you really should think about quitting. Well, Casey, I've been smoking since I was 10 years old and blah, blah, blah. And so you want to give me all the excuses about why you do it, because you're trying to tell me you don't understand my brain. I thought about this before. If I say, Steve, you've been smoking since you're 10 years old, you'll probably never quit. No, Casey, I've been worrying about how I've been coughing lately. And you literally would go, this is the nature. That's why I started my side of it with, people do not understand the complexity of ambivalence because it seems like such a simple construct. But when you're looking at human dialogue, the ambivalence that exists in the brain converts into resistance between you and I, and tension and discord, as soon as I start to share my perspective on your brain. Does that make so? This is why this is why you're saying, I can just say, hey, don't we want to play by the same set of rules? Does that seem like a fair starting place for a discussion? Right. Does it seem like accountability equals accountability for all? And it will create, yes, I've already thought of that. Yeah, but, and that's why I always tell when I teach this stuff is, as soon as you hear, yeah, but, you need to rethink what's coming out of your mouth, because the brain has already been activated into a defense stance.
Okay. So I want to do this for another hour on very theoretical level. This is supposed to be a leadership show for Foresight TV and senior leaders. So we're gonna shift. We may have to. I think we may need our own show to do this other broader societal stuff. We could we could change the whole world. But anyway, what does all of this have to do with senior living? And I'm going to ask this question with a little bit more framework.
Sure.
You're primarily famous in the senior living space in this world of sales and using motivational interviewing for salespeople to help people. I don't know. I'm a little prejudicial here because this is how it comes across, to help manipulate people into deciding they need senior living. Is sometimes what it comes across on. But I guess more broadly as a concept, I think it probably has bigger implications than just sales. So I've thrown a lot at you in 3 sentences.
Love it. I'm going to parse this out a bit too. I love that you say that, Steve, because if that's what's happening, it's not motivational interviewing. And what I'll tell, because so many people don't know the terminology of what that is, it is a very specific title of a method of communication. If you type in motivational interviewing, you're going to see thousands and thousands of research articles. It's extremely well researched globally. It's used in healthcare, mental health, substance use, policing, like you name it. And I've trained a population in it. As soon as it comes across as manipulation, and this is what I talk about because it is an evidence-based practice, an EBP, which feds in the US pay for evidence-based practices, right? What I compare evidence-based practices to is grandma's recipe. So this is where I'm going to parse out this thing about manipulation, and then I'm going to take this into senior living sales. Is if you think of a recipe that your grandmother makes, and yes, it looks like a Mrs. Fields cookie, it tastes a very specific way. If you change the ingredients or the process at all, it's just not going to taste like grandma's recipe. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it bad. It just doesn't taste like grandma's. Motivation is a specific evidence-based practice. If you are using it in sales to manipulate people, it may look like a Mrs. Fields cookie, but you take a bite of it and you're like, who put too much salt in this? Tastes disgusting. When you go to measure it, it will not measure as MI. So I want to say that to you because I know that you are such an advocate and a proponent of ethical approaches. You and I are on the same page. I'm a clinical social worker, so I am very much into ethical application. Where this comes into sales, how I got into the sales world, is one particular community, Touchmark originally, and then Legacy as well. But they had me come in and they're like, yeah, we want to teach our people motivational interviewing. We want to help them. And I said, there is a potential when people are using motivational interviewing that sales could go down. Are you willing to do that? And Touchmark specifically said, if this is not the right community for them, then yes, we are totally okay with that. And that threw me for a loop because I had no intention of ever training anyone in sales, ever. You know, because of the evilness of sales as a social worker. I'm just like, I'm not going to train people in sales. But when Touchmark had said that genuinely, then I thought, okay, what I see in the sales world in senior living is you're dealing with people under a profound amount of stress in difficult situations, not only the individual, but the adult children who have profound ambivalence. This is literally my area of expertise of how do you help people move through ambivalence in a healthy way. So that was what was critical to me. And I'm like, I will teach this, but I'm going to teach you fidelity-based motivation, which means there's no manipulation. It is so hard for salespeople to bridge over from relationship sales into motivational interviewing because all sales teaches is find the hook. You've got to find the hook. Where's the hook? Where's the hook? Where's the hook? How do we bring them baskets of blueberries? Do we talk about their dog Fluffy? Do we talk about, it's where's the hook? Where's the hook? Where's the hook? Motivational interviewing is like, that is a waste of narrative. All you're trying to do is help this person resolve their ambivalence in a way that their behavior now aligns with what their deeper value set is. Not are you going to put a head in a bed. Those are two different constructs. So that's why I love that you talk about that, because I just want to dispel like there is not one single thing, if you follow grandma's recipe, that has any form of manipulation in it whatsoever. You're helping this brain function and fire better at this stage in its life to make the best decision given all the information it has of where it should be for the best quality of life from this point forward. And this is what I tell on the sales side of it is the majority of people, if they knew the value they would get in moving to a senior living community, the data says they'll have a better quality of life for so many people from where they're currently living. But that is informed choice. That is not sales. But if you give people their, and I think if they don't have ambivalence and they don't want to move, go talk to someone else, because if everybody that was eligible for senior living, that was a potential thing for them. If they actually knew the quality of life benefits they could have, if they understand it dimensionally, there's people out there going, God, I wish I would have moved sooner.
So this is fascinating to me, and I feel like I've got some things I want to talk about that I don't want to do on air. So I'm gonna save that, and we're gonna do some stuff off air that I really do want to tackle. But I would say that sort of going into this, I'm going to leave this as a comment. Leave you a chance to brief, and then I want to move on to the rest of senior living. I think the challenge is that when you teach motivational interviewing to salespeople, every time somebody walks in, they've already decided two things. They've decided that senior living is better for everybody, no matter what, and their goal is to help those prospects see that it's better for them. And so I'm not sure. I think it's almost impossible, particularly when your paycheck is there. So I think it's very, very hard to maybe do it with as much integrity. And I think even as I've seen it taught, I think there's always this underlining precept. There's sort of this lip service to, well, we're going to find what's best for them. But I, as a salesperson, already know the answer is senior living.
Which the first thing I tell them is, I don't have a problem with any of that. Just don't call it motivational interviewing, because it's not. Don't tell me it's grandma's recipe if you're leaving two of the ingredients out and you're cooking it half as long, because then it's not grandma's recipe. Which is fine. Just don't say that it is, because it's not. Then people take a bite of it going, I don't like this. It has too much salt in it, but I guess they call it motivational. I'm like, that measure. That's why I developed a tool to measure if people are actually using it to fidelity. So it's not just, oh, did they take a class? It's literally, I can listen to a conversation and I have a rubric that you can measure and go, yeah, see how much salt they poured in there? That's why that scored lower. You see how they did that perfectly right? That's why it scored so well right here. So that's why I'm so obsessed with fidelity based, is because people call everything whatever they want to, with no accountability for, are we actually measurably doing what we're saying we're doing? And if you follow the method per grandma's recipe, outcomes improve exponentially, which is why everybody wants this, because it improves outcomes, but they want to do their version of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to want to talk a little bit about, does it apply? So I'm a senior living consumer. My stepfather lives in a community. He's got dementia. I manage his life. I mean, and I'm responsible for his life. And let me tell you, being a family caregiver, even when I've got all the money in the world to spend on him, I'm very fortunate. I don't have to worry about costs. It's really damn hard. And I'm wondering if motivational, maybe we're missing the boat, and that these techniques could be used to make the lives of family members better, who are people that don't get the and team members. Talk to me a little bit about that. How would we go about doing that?
Again, to keep it simple, and then all of a sudden you see the application, is that every situation you're talking about, Steve, has to do with ambivalence.
It does.
You have to make so many decisions a day that really you're torn between your decision. Like, you know what you want to do, you know what your heart's telling you, know what your head's telling you. Then you're like, which one am I going to surrender to today? Well, I'm going to make the best decision with what I have right now. And that's why AI is so appealing, because you get a process with somebody that feels like they truly don't have skin in the game, and they're going to give you objective feedback to let you get all your thoughts out of your head. That is actually what motivation is designed to do, human to human, but with a deeper level of compassion for the person that's doing it. But you can't be attached to that person's outcome. That's when you're talking about church members or family members or children or whatever. There's just innate bias in there that AI removes from itself. If you can do that in a conversation, like, oh my God, I'd love to talk to somebody about this, but everybody's got skin in the game, or everybody has an opinion. I don't have the energy to listen to everybody's opinion right now.
Yeah.
Which is what prevents us from having dialogue to get through our own ambivalence in our brain. So I don't care if we're talking about an adult child and their parent. I'm talking the same thing with an administrator and their social work staff, or an administrator in a facility and their sales staff, because everyone in that community, including the residents, have ambivalence on any given day about their job, about their performance indicators, about the budget, about the census, about what's for dinner tonight, about, I don't like the way my bed feels, or I want to live in that. Like, the ambivalence is profound. And if this method of communication, which it is masterful at helping people resolve ambivalence efficiently and effectively. That's why I also combat that people say that motivational is just therapy. It's not. Good motivational interviewing should take 2 to 3 conversations of no more than 15 to 20 minutes. Like, this is not therapy. You're helping the brain get unstuck. I don't need to know about your trauma and your history and your family life. That's not going to help you make a better decision right now. But people want to talk about that because they've been trained. Well, that's what you do in therapy, is give everybody all the information, because people ask for all the information. And when they ask for all the information, then they have a ton of opinions, and they want to give an opinion. It's like, God, why did I give them all this information? Because this is not helpful for me. I heard everybody else tell me this too. Like, you can just see how this gets locked up.
Oh man, you need to get away. My opinion, you need to stop teaching salespeople. You need to be talking about communication for team members and residents and team members and families. It could because I think the problem is that I don't, I've been to a bunch of senior living conferences in the last couple months. I go to church every week, and the one thing that really over and over again I'm struck by is how many perfect people I'm around. Right. I mean, everybody but me. I know I don't have my, because I know what's in here. I know what the mess that's sitting in here. But I
Yes.
look at you. I look at you right now, man. Casey Jackson, man, that guy has got it all together. He's got perfect life. Jada, who's producing in the back, she's a little young, so she's still got some things. But for where she's at, man, she's got a perfect life. For me, I'm
Yeah.
a mess. And the truth of the matter is, we've all got ambivalence, and if we can start
Yes.
putting that stuff on the table. And I'll give you a good example for me personally. I've been going through some not life-threatening health issues, but I've gone through this cycle for about the last 6 months where I get something fixed. I feel really good for a few days, and I get sick again. And I had a bleed in my stomach, and I had pneumonia. And I'm actually in a really good 2 days are really good doing. This is my second day, but as I was going to conference, of course, everybody says, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm fine." And I've started saying, "Well, actually, no, I'm not fine. I'm really struggling with this." And I've gotten some real support and some ideas about how to go about resolving it, solving my ambivalence. But
Yes.
it had to start with me being willing to say that.
That's exactly it. And this is when you can just lay out what the ambivalence is. What there's all these mechanisms that we know why we react or reflect the way that we do, or have these reflective responses. When people tell us they're struggling, it is a human response to want to help somebody struggling. So what we do is we want to give opinions and advice or share what we've done, and it doesn't help the person who's struggling. So to have this human response is good. We should have human responses, but to have a strategic response that helps their brain function better, that's like an ideal. I mean, this is why my whole career has been dedicated to this for the last 30 years, because I know the effectiveness of seeing, oh my gosh, to see people get unblocked and make progress and have a better quality of life personally and professionally, to see a community. I work with large organizations like child welfare organizations and state agencies to help them embed this, because when administrators talk to their staff, the management this way, and management talks to their staff this way and helps them resolve ambivalence, brains function better, and cognitive stress load reduces. This the book that I'm writing is around all this. It's like, God, why wouldn't we have a conversation? Steve, I can do this because this is my passion right now. Why wouldn't we have a conversation that I can communicate in a way that helps your brain heal and your personhood heal, and as I'm doing it, it helps my brain heal at the same time, because I'm not doing things that are counter and destructive to my own brain process of trying to fix your problem and stressing out over how am I going to help Steve? How am I going to help Steve? How am I going to deal with this? It causes dual cognitive stress load. And this method of communication, when you listen, it's like, oh my gosh, I am more calm in my body. I'm more mindful. And there's all research around mindfulness. This person is more mindful. They are more comfortable in their own brain space. And when they're comfortable in their brain space, their prefrontal cortex lights up better, and they get into better decision, more holistic, more spiritual decision-making processes. So it's like, why wouldn't I want to orchestrate that? But the problem is I don't get credit for it because I didn't come up with the suggestion. Steve did. And professionals like to get credit for, I got the sale, I helped them make that decision. I'm the one who brought it home. And it's like, yeah, if it's ego-based, there's no way it can be other person-centered, which means it can't be rooted in empathy or compassion.
Okay, so we are out of time, and I'm brokenhearted about that. I'm gonna ask you one more question, just because it's a pet peeve of mine, and it's a sort of a very narrow thing. You talk a lot about how language is really important, and I agree with that. But I also think we can become overly obsessed by it. Right now, we've got there are a lot of people who are fighting this anti-ageism battle. For 20 years, we've hated the term facility. We changed the name CCRC to Life Plan Community because we want to fix it. Interestingly, weirdly, I hear more and more people using the word facility. It's like it's coming back as people are trying to fight it. And I've sort of come to the conclusion that I don't know that it really makes that much difference. I just love your thoughts.
Yeah, I think what it matters to is the hearer. Whoever hears it, you could use facility 15 times in a sentence, and some person you're talking to, it doesn't even register. They know exactly what you're talking about, and it doesn't trigger any reactivity in them. One person, you could say community 15 times, and one time say facility, and they want to throw it in your face. It is individual brain to individual brain. It's human to human to human to human to human. So to make these sweeping statements of what we should do, I think the thought behind it makes sense for people who are trying to progress or evolve language and narrative. totally makes sense to me. But on an individual conversation basis, I will know immediately if I use the word facility and it triggers you and you say something. The way I look at it is, oh, I can see how that affected the brain. Don't do that because it just causes stress on the brain, which makes this a conversation less efficient and less effective.
Great. So this has been a great conversation. I don't know whether it's been helpful to the audience. It's been helpful to me. But one last question. So listening to all this, I'm a senior living executive and say, man, that's a lot of stuff to think about. What do I do with that? What would your one recommendation, one takeaway?
I think put it into AI. I mean, partly smug and partly true.
Yeah.
Like, what do I want to do to evolve? I think what it comes down to, Steve, is what outcome do you want? So I think that's what I'd say for people from here. What do I do with all this? Well, what do you want for an outcome? Do you want your brain to function better? Then it's like, then start to look at what metacognition really is and make sure your brain is working the best that it can work, given your capacity and situations that you're in. If you want to learn more about effective communication, then dive into what's really effective communication. The reason why I think you and I get along so well is I can barely tolerate all the white noise on social media, because everybody's an expert and a consultant on everything, and most people don't know that much about what they're talking about. This is my obsession with giving people, what does the data show that this will actually move the needle for real human beings in the real world?
Yeah.
Those are the things that I obsess with. So I think it depends on what you want, on what filters you want to start to listen to these things or have these conversations, either with human beings or with AI. Just get clear about what do I want for an end result for myself.
Terrific. I love that. Tell us where we find you, what you're working on, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Sort of your 30 or 45 or second or a minute commercial.
I'm just about ready. I'm looking for publishers for my book on helping heal, the science and the spirit that transforms trauma. So it's a book that I'm just finishing up. The trainings I do are through what you see on the screen right now, IFIOC.com, Institute for Individual and Organizational Change. And then I just do people that just want me to come out and talk, CaseyJackson.com, because I love impromptu conversations with real people about real topics and how do we make a real difference. So those are the things that I continue to be involved in and spread the word. I'm just getting ready to do next week. I do a keynote speech for the Hostage Negotiators Conference, because we're all talking about language and how do we help the brain and help people get better. So
cool. Casey, great, amazing conversation. Perfect way for me to wrap up the week. Jada, thank you for producing behind the scenes. You are amazing as always. And of course, nobody ever sees you. I hope all of you have a great, great weekend. And thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with 2 more great live streams.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve.